Emily Carter's disappearance had already left the town paralyzed with fear. The discovery of her locket, the chilling words painted on the warehouse wall. SHE didn't listen. And then the sudden vanishing of Julia Marks. It all seemed too twisted, too orchestrated to be coincidence. But who was Julia Marks? Julia was 23, bright, ambitious, with a laugh that could soften even the hardest heart. She was a college student studying journalism, someone who believed truth was worth chasing, even when it hurt. She had grown up in the same town as Emily, though their paths rarely crossed. Julia wasn't an outsider to the whispers that haunted Emily's story. She'd heard them in classrooms, in coffee shops, in the endless scroll of online gossip. And unlike most, she didn't dismiss Emily. She wanted to investigate. In the weeks before her disappearance, Julia had been working on a research project for school. Her topic? Corruption and small-town prejudice. Her professor said she threw herself into it with unusual intensity, digging through local archives, talking to people most avoided, and even filing requests for police records. But then came the detail that froze investigators. Julia had mentioned Emily Carter by name in her notes. She was connecting the dots no one else had dared to trace. Her roommate recalled Julia's last words before leaving their apartment. "I think I found something, but I don't know who to trust." That was the night Julia never came home. Police compared Emily and Julia's timelines. The parallels were undeniable. Emily had been cataloging corruption in her notebook. Julia was writing about the same dark undercurrent. Both had confided, in vague but desperate words, that they felt watched. Both had been silenced before they could speak louder. But who was silencing them? The answer began to surface in fragments. A neighbor reported seeing Julia near the old courthouse days before she vanished, speaking to a man in plain clothes. Surveillance cameras picked up the same figure lingering near Emily's apartment weeks earlier. And when investigators finally enhanced the grainy footage, the face staring back at them was one that shocked the entire town. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a drifter. The warehouse discovery sent shockwaves through the town. SHE didn't listen. Scrawled across the cracked wall in rushed handwriting, seemed to pulse in the minds of everyone who saw it. The message wasn't just graffiti. It was personal, deliberate, and mocking. It clung to the investigators like a fog, whispering questions they couldn't yet answer. The detectives retraced Emily's life, combing through her routines, her friends, her coworkers, even her most private notes. Every corner of her existence was turned inside out. Yet still, the answer to where she was remained maddeningly out of reach. Julia Marks had written articles for the student paper, often digging into uncomfortable truths about local politics, corruption, and the darker corners of town life. Julia was the kind of person who asked too many questions, the kind who wasn't afraid to chase shadows until they turned into light. Her sudden vanishing mirrored Emily's in chilling detail. Her apartment door left unlocked, her purse still inside, and her phone left buzzing on the nightstand. Witnesses recalled seeing her walking home the night she disappeared, but then, nothing. She was swallowed by silence. The town spiraled into fear. Mothers clutched their daughters tighter. Women stopped walking alone after dark. Every face in a crowd became suspect. Every shadow seemed to stretch too long. And at the center of it all stood a man, the calm, commanding voice leading the investigation. On television, he radiated assurance. "We will find who's responsible," he told reporters, his eyes steady, his tone unyielding. "We will bring Julia home. We will not stop until justice is served." People clung to his words. Families trusted him. The police department rallied behind him. In a world teetering on the edge of panic, Hale was their anchor. But Emily's mother, weary with grief yet sharpened by instinct, wasn't convinced. She studied Hale's face during press conferences, the way he leaned just a little too hard into his speeches, the way his eyes darted when certain questions were asked. "Something about him doesn't add up," she whispered to her sister one night. "He looks at us like he's watching, not helping." Her suspicion was dismissed at first as grief-stricken paranoia, but she wasn't wrong. The investigation pressed on. Days bled into nights, and then into days again. Detectives pored over security footage, canvassed neighborhoods, and chased tips that led nowhere. Then came the forum posts. Anonymous messages began to appear in the same gossip forum where the first ominous note about Emily had surfaced. At first, investigators assumed they were from Emily herself, forced into writing under duress. But these new posts were darker, colder. They described Emily's childhood fears, her therapy sessions, even details about her first breakup. Things no stranger could possibly know. The posts weren't just taunting, they were intimate. Suspecting Emily's captor was behind them, the cybercrimes unit traced the IP addresses. Everyone expected it to lead to an abandoned house, a library computer, or maybe a burner phone. Instead, the results stunned them. The posts were being uploaded directly from inside the police precinct. At first, panic swept the department. Was there a mole? A hacker? Some kind of system breach? But a closer look revealed something worse. The logins weren't stolen. They were legitimate. Someone with full access was doing this. So a small task force was formed in secret, excluding Hale. They monitored internal systems, quietly, waiting. Soon, a pattern emerged: late-night logins, edits to evidence files, access to restricted records. And again, the digital fingerprints pointed back to one man, Detective Hale. It didn't make sense at first. Hale was the one who had fought hardest for the case. He was the one who had found Emily's locket by the riverbank. The one who had insisted they check the warehouse. The one who always seemed to be one step ahead. But that was it. He had found too much. Every crucial discovery had come through Hale's hands. Every lead that gained traction had his fingerprints. It wasn't dedication. It was orchestration. He wasn't chasing the story. He was writing it. The breakthrough came when Julia Marks was found. It was dawn when a farmer, driving past an old, abandoned farmhouse at the edge of town, saw something strange. A figure stumbling through the tall grass, clothes torn, face pale, eyes wide with terror. It was Julia. She had escaped, bruised, dehydrated, trembling, but alive. At the hospital, she broke down as detectives gathered around her bed. Between sobs, she described her captivity. Locked in a basement, no windows, a single mattress on the floor. She heard footsteps above her at odd hours, a heavy presence moving slowly through the house. Her captor was tall, broad-shouldered, with a commanding voice that barked orders, but never raised in panic. She never saw his face fully, always a mask or darkness, but she remembered the smell, a sharp, expensive cologne, and the way he spoke, clipped, deliberate, with authority. Her words froze the room. Everyone knew who she was describing. It was Hale. Investigators moved fast. When they searched Hale's unmarked vehicle, tucked beneath the spare tire, they found Julia's bracelet, delicate silver, engraved with her initials. Then came the raid on his home. In the garage, behind stacks of old case files, they uncovered a small box. Inside lay the missing half of Emily's torn locket photo. Hale had kept it. A trophy. The evidence was undeniable. The arrest shook the town like an earthquake. Hale, once the trusted face of law enforcement, was let out in cuffs, his expression unreadable. Cameras flashed. Reporters screamed questions. His colleagues stood in stunned silence, some refusing to accept the truth even as the facts screamed it. In the interrogation room, Hale sat in silence for hours. Then, finally, he spoke. His voice was calm, detached, almost clinical. Emily, he explained, had reminded him of a woman from his past, a witness who had testified against him during a misconduct inquiry years ago, nearly ending his career. Emily wasn't that woman, but her defiance, her independence, the way she refused to be intimidated, it triggered something in him. She didn't listen, he muttered, echoing the words on the warehouse wall. She didn't play the role he had written for her. She didn't fall in line. And for that, she became his obsession. He confessed to planting Emily's locket near the river, to writing the messages, to manipulating the evidence trail. He admitted Julia had simply been a message, a continuation of his twisted narrative. And Emily? He smirked when asked. He wouldn't say where she was. The courtroom overflowed with reporters, townsfolk, and grieving families. Emily's mother sat front row, clutching the restored locket with trembling hands. Julia testified, her voice shaking but unbroken, describing the terror she endured and the moment she chose to run, to survive. Prosecutors painted Hale as a predator who weaponized his badge to control the story, hiding in plain sight while playing God with people's lives. His defense argued insanity. The jury didn't buy it. The guilty verdict came swift and unanimous. Yet justice was bittersweet. Emily's body was never found. Hale refused to reveal her final resting place, his silence a cruel final punishment. Her family clung to the verdict as justice, but peace never came. Outside the courthouse, Emily's mother spoke to the cameras, her voice trembling but firm. He may have silenced Emily, but he will never silence her story. The town was forever changed. Trust in law enforcement fractured. Friends who had once gossiped about Emily's recklessness now carried unbearable guilt. Julia, the survivor, found her voice, becoming an advocate for women who had suffered in silence. Detective Hale thought he could control the narrative, but stories have a way of revealing the truth. Emily Carter's vanishing wasn't just a tragedy. It was a mirror, showing us the danger that hides behind familiar faces. Justice found its mark, but for Emily, justice came too late. In memory of Emily Carter, may her voice never be silenced.